right, Shalom, first and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace, love, and salutation to all you occupants pushing this truth and truth sincerity. Before I get started with this lesson was inspired by the elder, the priest Isaiah. Here's the elder brothers page, GMS, the Spirit of Prophecy. If you haven't subscribed to the elder Isaiah page, I would highly suggest subscribing to the elder brothers page. And we had a conversation at the camp. It was the elder, me, the brother Yashimai, I believe the brother Thamayim, and the brother Yakunah. And one of the things that the elder did say was to revisit some topics. And one of the topics I want to get into is the 10 tribes. Okay, you so-called Hispanics, you so-called Mexicans, okay, you so-called Puerto Ricans, you so-called Dominicans, you so-called Cubans on your father's side, you so-called Native American and Seminole Indians on your father's side. I want to get into how y'all got over here, because the white man will tell you these lies. The red man, the devil, will tell you you came through the barren strait. We all got that. We all had that lie fed to us in elementary school. All right, in this public school system. So one of the things that the elder did mention to me, he was like, "Yeah, bro, you know, you kind of good on them tribes." So I will say, you know, you have to find your niche in this ministry and run with it. All right, because one of the things I do like to focus on is these 12 tribes and prophecy, just like the elders page. You know, he did a lesson on, I gotta watch this one. You know me, GMS News and Prophecy. The Lord is visiting the earth with hundreds of earthquakes. You know me, I like to do lessons on earthquakes. All right, but what I want to get into is a book that I had put, a PDF, and it's actually a book. This book is actually called, give me a second, it's called The Medieval Empire of the Israelites, from Robert Gresham. All right, now it says, this is page 24, it might be 25 on your phone. It goes into Ecuador. So I'm gonna just read this, and Lord willing, you're edified. This is for you pro-black, back to Africa Israelites who believe that so-called Latinos and Native Americans aren't Israelites. So basically, I'm not an Israelite according to these guys, because I'm from the tribe of Reuben. So basically, I'm not an Israelite according to these pro-blacks. All right, and there's so many lies going out, there's so many false doctrine going out, that we have to revisit these topics. Okay, so this is on page 24 of the Medieval Empire of the Israelites. The priest Tizayawan, the elder brother Tizayawan, did a lesson on this years ago, and I just want to revisit this topic through the Spirit. So this is under Ecuador, and this is a book that's 400 pages long, right? Now on page 24, it says Ecuador, as regards the South American Indians and their possible relationship to the lost tribes of Israel. An article was published in the Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv, December 1974, with the following content. In 1587, Jesuit Nicholas Deltsu was sent to South America by the King of Spain for missionary purposes to convert the Indians to Christianity. And I'm going to stop right here, because what I didn't pull up, and I might just pull it up right now, we're going to go into the doctrine of discovery. Give me a sec. The doctrine of discovery. Okay. Now, the brother Kashakwala had mentioned this months ago when I was speaking at camp. So this is the doctrine of discovery from the Searcher. Says the doctrine of discovery is a legal and religious principle that justified European colonization by claiming lands not inhabited by Christians as available for discovery and ownership. Now, we already know the scriptures say the earth is given into the hands of the wicked, And we already know Esau came up through the Renaissance period, the rebirth period. So this is in his time period, this was his justification to bring so-called Christianity to the tribes over here in the Americas. It says it originated from papal bulls in the 15th century and has lasted impacts on indigenous rights and land claims. When you talk about indigenous people, you're talking about so-called Native Americans, so-called Seminole Indians, and so-called Hispanics that were already over here, which I'm going to get into. So this is a doctrine of discovery. This allowed Esau, all right, to come over here. Let's get a precept right quick. Let's get what is it? Isaiah 10. Isaiah 10 and 1. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that right grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. So Esau is always coming up with these unrighteous decrees. Look what he's doing right now with ICE. And this is the right time frame to bring the truth to you so-called Latinos, you so-called Mexicans, you so-called Puerto Ricans, because you're being targeted by ICE right now. But there's no new thing under the sun with Esau, Edom, the red man, the devil that the Bible speaks of. Yes, that you think that the so-called white man, he just wants you to work. He just thinks that you're the help. Okay, the so-called black man is really your brother for you so-called Latinos. Okay, for you ones that are going to receive this word, because 2/3 of all Israelites are going to be cut off and be deleted. Okay, like it says in Zechariah 13 and 8. But this man has been, ever since this man came back on the Renaissance period, where he whitewashed all the images of the Israelites, he's been making these unrighteous decrees. Okay, so the doctrine of discovery is nothing new with this devil. All right, so let's go back into this medieval empire of the Israelites. It says, in Argentina, Nicholas discovered a people who bore Jewish names, which were not Jewish. Okay, we are the Israelites, and the Jews are from the tribe of Judah. When you look up Yahweh, it really goes into the word Jew. But then you had Yahweh, you had Loya, which is Levi, you had Bunyamin, which is Benjamin, all right, in Israel during the time of Yahweh, our Lord and Savior. But, the northern kingdom was already here in the Americas during the time of Yahweh, all right? And we're going to get into that. Nicholas discovered that people who bore, I'm going to say Israelite names, namely Abraham, David, Moses, and so forth. And I'm going to say this. I grew up out there in the West Coast as a child, and I had a lot of so-called Mexican friends, and they had biblical names. I had a friend named Joseph. I had his brother was Isaac, and his older brother was Aaron. Those are biblical names, all right? That's the spirit of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. To the question about whether they were circumcised, and according to the law, you had to be circumcised on what, the 8th day, according to the law? These people answered thus, yes, just like our ancestors. In the same region were found stone knives used for circumcision. And keep in mind, Amalek, all right, those fake you-know-whos, you know what I'm talking about, they circumcise babies with their mouths. Where is that in the Bible? That is abomination. I just had to say that. Yes, just like our ancestors, in the same region were found stone knives used for circumcision. Sharpened stone knives are mentioned also in the Bible as special instruments for completion of the rite of circumcision. An Argentine tribe where a stone slab with 3 commandments was found causes no less interest. This is in Argentina. Do not steal, do not lie, do not kill. This is for you pro-black Israelites, man, who say that so-called Native Americans and so-called Hispanics aren't Israelites. This is historical proof. I guess you believe it when the white man says it. For you pro-black, back to Africa Israelites. Okay? It says, do not steal, do not lie, do not kill. One may assume that these commandments are from the Old Testament. Yes, they are. And that they appeared in these lands before the arrival of the Spaniards. Yeah, Esau. Okay, you had that movie 1492 where that devil, that murderer, Cristobal Colon, as you know, Christopher Columbus, mentioned the Apocrypha. And he had Cristobal Colon had Hebrew interpreters when he came over here in 1492. Why? Because he knew that he was coming over here, all right, through prophecy to find the Israelites. So it says in 1974, in this very same region, were found round stone slabs with menorahs, 7-pointed candlesticks. That's another thing. I work in a certain area here in Atlanta, and the so-called you-know-who's, those fake you-know-who's, have a 9-pointed menorah. There's no, man, it says in Revelation that Yahweh Shah was in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, not no 9 candlesticks. So you so-called you-know-who's, you go and slap off, man. Ain't no daggone, the Lord didn't appear in no 9-pointed candlestick. It was a 7-pointed candlestick for them 7 churches, which is Asia Minor. So once again, you so-called you-know-who's wrong once again, okay? You're the devil that the Bible speaks of, all right? It says on them along the sides of these menorahs in the Aramaic language was an inscription, Passover. The Aramaic language recalls the language of ancient Israel, all right? The Lashawan Kodash is actually the ancient language of Israel, all right? Alongside the slab was found a long stone in a shape which resembles a brick with the engraving of a ship, the emblem of it says Zebulon. This is what those you-know-who's say. Zebulon, which is Zabalawan in the Hebrew, which means dwelling. That's what Zebulon means, not Zebulon. All right, there's no V's in the Hebrew. That's another strike on you so-called you-know-who's. And with engraved words, Zipporah, the name of Moses' wife, and perhaps the name of the ship. Does this mean that JEWs sailed here on a ship? Scientists think that the stone is nearly 3,000 years old. Yeah, the northern tribe sailed on them ships, as we're going to get into. Scientists think that this stone is nearly 3,000 years old. It must be said that the problem of the South American J-ish Indians has been occupying minds in Europe since as early as the 17th century. The Amsterdam Rabbi Manasseh ben Israel. See, that goes to show you other Israelite camps like IUIC, you'll have a name and you'll be like Ben Israel. It's Ban Yashala. But your leader, I guess General Nathaniel, all right, he likes to give you a Yiddish name, all right. So continue on, it says, devoted many years to it. A deeply religious man, he believed that there existed on earth the mysterious sabbatical river Sambation, which is mentioned in the Talmud. We don't go by the Talmud, man. That's another strike on you so-called you-know-who's. We don't go by no daggone Talmud, man. We go by the scriptures, all right? The King James Version of the Bible. Yes, we do break it down in the NLT and the BBE. All right, the Holy Scriptures, the Old Testament, the Apocrypha, and the New Testament. Not no daggone Talmud, man. Its miraculous property is the fact that it is rough with rolling stones and absolutely insurmountable on weekdays. But with the advent of the Sabbath rest, it claims and becomes quiet. The JEWs living on the side of the Sambation have no possibility of crossing the river, and as much as it would be a violation of the Shabbat, which really, it's the Shabbat, okay? Not the Shabbat. And they can only exchange words with the fellow tribesmen on the side of the river. Continue on, it says, whenever it becomes calm, the ancient historians Josephus Flavius, the Judaic war, and Pliny the Elder, natural history, wrote about the Sambation. Manasseh ben Israel emphasizes in his book that many learned men believe that the 10 tribes of Israel settled on the other side of the river. He also quoted many authors, for example, Josephus Flavius, who in his own works had mentioned that supposedly Emperor Titus himself had seen the river. This is all hearsay from men. All right, this is just, you got to take the meat from the bones with certain these historical facts as well as the Blue Letter Bible. Okay, let's just get to the point. Later, at a meeting of Manasseh with the missionary Antonio de Montezinos, the rabbi finally convinced that the American Indians in particular are descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. Manasseh learned that Montezinos, that in 1642, when the latter was traveling in the mountains of Ecuador, South America, 4 Indians met him who greeted him with Shema Israel, which is the Shema prayer. Shema, Yasha Allah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Hear Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Okay? The traveler said that the Indians spoke with him in Hebrew and called themselves the descendants of Reuben and Levi. Here, even Manasseh came to the conclusion that the American Indians are the descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. On December 23rd, 1649, he wrote to John Drury, the Puritan divine, "I think that the descendants of the 10 tribes live not only in America, but also around the whole world. Yes, because we're scattered, according to Deuteronomy 28:64, due to our disobedience to the Heavenly Father. We're everywhere." Okay? You're going to have Israelites that look like so-called Japanese people. You're going to have Israelites that look like those you-know-whos. You're going to have Israelites that look like so-called Africans. You're going to have Israelites that look like so-called everyday white people, because we're scattered. These are the JEWs who have not seen the second temple. They possibly will be dispersed until the prophecies of their reunification be realized. Man, that's heavy. Yes, the 12 tribes through this ministry, all right, under the elect of the nation of Israel, are being to come together with this word. Lord willing, we endure to the end and be saved. So what I want to get into, for you pro-black back to Africa Israelites who believe that all 12 tribes are just black, it says it right here, all right, that Native Americans and Seminole Indians and so-called Latinos came over here, and it says it in the Bible. So let's get to 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, verses 40. Verse 39. "And whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, these are the 10 tribes, all right, outside of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, you have the other tribes, which represents the northern kingdom, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea," which it says Hoshea the king, "which Shalmaneser, which is Shalmaneser the fifth, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, so they came into another land." So let's get a little history. And don't mind this picture, because Israelites did not, they didn't have leprosy, okay? This is just, Esau trying to make it look like the Israelites. What's like I said, you're gonna have Israelites that look like so-called white people, but back in the day, Jake didn't look like this, man. Hoshea, king of Israel, and Shalmaneser the fifth, king of Assyria. 2 Kings, the 17th chapter, and it says Hoshea was the 19th and last king of the northern kingdom. Now keep in mind, every king of the northern kingdom was completely wicked, man, flat out wicked, man. Ruling for 9 years in approximately 731 to 722 BC. In his annals, the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III claims to have killed Pekah, king of Israel, and installed Hoshea in his place. 2 Kings, the 15th chapter, verse 30. The Bible and the Assyrian records agree that Hoshea initially paid tribute to his Assyrian overlords. 2 Kings, 17th chapter, which I'm going to get into. In the annals of Tiglath-Pileser III state that he received from Israel 10 talents of gold, as well as silver and other booty. Under the next Assyrian king, Shalmaneser V, Hoshea stopped paying tribute and sought help from Egypt. This proved to be his undoing, as Shalmaneser V imprisoned Hoshea and invaded Israel. 2 Kings 17, 14, and 2 Kings 17, 4 verses 5, excuse me. After a 3-year siege, Israel's capital Samaria fell, and its inhabitants were taken into captivity, as you see right here. But Jake was a darker shade of brown, man. All right. Bringing an end to the nations, 2 Kings 17 verses 6 and 2 Kings 18 verses 9 through 11. So we're going to go into the scripture and read this. 2 Kings 17 and 1. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea the son of Elah to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. All right, like I said, all these kings of the northern kingdom, flat out wicked, man. But not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. And the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria, took Samaria, and carried Israel away into Assyria, the northern kingdom, and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. For it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord, Yahweh their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the land of Pharaoh king of Egypt, and feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, the other nations which cannot be saved, Genesis, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and the king of Israel which they had made. So it's a continuous cycle of Israel continuing to be wicked. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom continue to be wicked, and we got carried away captive. That's why we're here in America in 2025, December 2025, about to go into January 2026, due to our disobedience. But there's going to be a remnant that's going to repent. Lord, when it's our brothers in Great Millstone and the Righteous Affiliate Camps, because you're the camps, you ain't got it. Do you think General Yohana is going to do a breakdown of this? Do you think these other camps are going to do breakdowns of the apostles and the elders and the regional camp heads and this younger man down are going to do about history? No. They're going to give you gimmicks, okay? They're going to give you singing, dance, two-stepping, Hebrew Israelite rap music. They're not going to give you the truth according to the Bible, man. Okay? So let's go back to 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter. And it says, these are the 10 tribes which carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king, whom Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters. So came they into another land. But they, the Israelites, took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, the Assyrians, and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, the Americas, North, Central, and South America, that they might keep their statutes, which when they even got there, they were going off as well, which they never kept in their own land. Yeah, due to their disobedience, that's why they were there in Syria. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years. And the same region is called Arsareth. And that's the Americas. Okay? Let's see if we can find a definition for Arsareth. I didn't really get to that. All right. So it says, let's go to this. Arsareth, the J-ish encyclopedia.com. Let's get this. It says, the Arsareth America, home of the Israelites. The name of the land beyond the great river, far away from the habitation of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing the laws of Moses until the time of restoration, according to 2nd Esdras. Well, it says the 4th Esdras, the 8th chapter, verse 45. Columbus identified America with this land. See, that's for you scoffers. Oh, Arsareth in America. When you could just type this up, you got the liberty to type this stuff up, and it basically tells you Arsareth is basically the Americas, man. All right? So, you got Simeon, as you so-called Dominican. Let's get it. Reuben are you so-called Seminole Indians. Gad is you so-called North American Indians. Asher are the indigenous people from Colombia to Uruguay. That's right. Napatalia, which means wrestling, are the indigenous people from Argentina to Chile. The world-famous soccer player Lionel Messi is from the tribe of Naphtali. Manasseh are you so-called Cubans. Simeon are you so-called Dominicans. Issachar are you so-called Mexicans. Zebulon are you so-called Guatemalans, the Panamanians on your father's side. This is all according to your father's side, because your father carries a seed according to Numbers 1 and 18. And Joseph, Ephraim, okay, because you read Numbers 1 and 32, Joseph is synonymous with Ephraim, you so-called Puerto Ricans, you Boricuans. What are they Puerto Rican? Boricua? All right, you so-called Puerto Ricans, all right, from the tribe of Ephraim, I am fruitful, all right, Aparium. So yeah, this is somewhat right, all right, just had to further clarify, but Arsareth is America, okay? So let's just paint the picture right quick. Let's look at a world map. So the Israelites of the Northern Kingdom, all right, they were in this area, Israel, which is Israel should be right here. Should be right here. Then they went into the Syrian captivity, which this is near modern day Iraq. All right. And it came through, I believe. Let's just paint the picture right quick, man. Let's get a map. Iran and the Gulf. Let's just type that up. I believe it's the Persian Gulf. I just want to be correct with this. Okay. Let's get some images, get some maps. All right. Let's get another. So they can't. So okay, let's paint the picture. So basically, let's get this one. This is a better one. All right. So the Israelites, they came out of the Assyrian captivity. They came through the Persian Gulf. Okay, let's get this world map once again. They came through the Israelites, they went from the Northern Kingdom, all right, they went from Israel to Assyria, which is basically in this area right here. They came through the Persian Gulf, down through the Arabian Sea. They came down through Africa. They came through South Africa, which is, you got the Horn of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, and they came over here to the Americas. So basically that took a year and a half. They came out the Persian Gulf, they came through, the Arabian Sea, parts of the Arabian Sea. They came down through Africa, all right? And then they came to the shores of North Central South America. You got a lot of Israelites in Brazil, the tribe of Asher, Argentina, and Chile, that's the tribe of Naphtali. Peru and Bolivia, that's Asher. Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, that's Asher. So on and so forth. Then you got right over here, you had Zebulon by the haven of ships. And then you got Issachar. And then over here in the Americas, you got Native Americans and Seminole Indians. This is how the 12 tribes got here. They didn't come through over here. They didn't come through the Bering Sea, as the white man want to tell you. Okay? He been telling you lies since you've been born. So this is how the 12 tribes got over here. So, for the Most High, verse 44, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, Took a year and a half to get over here from that region, and they called the same region Arsareth. Then dwelt they there until the latter time. Yeah, you so-called Native American, all 12 tribes are really here in America at this point in the game. Okay, the Southern Kingdom came here through the transatlantic slave trade, but the Northern Kingdom was already here. And then you had these conquistadors come over here. They call them so-called explorers, but they're really murderers. All right, they colonialized basically North, Central, and South America, man. All right. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, in the same region is called Arsareth. Then dwelt they there until the latter time, which we're in the latter time now. We're in the last days of the last days. We're at the end of Esau, Edom, the red man, the devil that the Bible speaks of. And now when they shall begin to come. So let's get a precept on this is concerning, let me see, it's 1 Chronicles 12. Just one more precept for close on out. 1 Chronicles 12 and 32, I believe. Yes. Now let's go back to this precept. It says, verse 43, they enter into the Euphrates. All right. Which, let me show you a picture of the Euphrates River. Excuse me. I kind of messed that one up, but it's all good. Euphrates River. It says Euphrates is the longest and one of the most historically important rivers in West Asia. Together with the Tigris, it is one of the two defining rivers of the Mesopotamia. Originating in Turkey, the Euphrates flows through Syria and Iraq to join the Tigris in the Shatt al-Arab in Iraq, which empties into the Persian Gulf. So they went through the Euphrates River into the Persian Gulf, through the Arabian Sea, through Africa, roughly a year and a half to come to the Americas. Okay? So it says, and they enter into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they passed over. Now let's get this last precept concerning you so-called Mexicans. You so-called Mexicans from the tribe of Issachar, which means he who was hired. Who's doing all the jobs right now? Who's cutting the grass? Who's painting the houses? Who's cooking the food? So-called Mexicans can make any food. They can make Indian food. Okay? Who's doing the jobs and keeping America afloat? You so-called Mexicans, excuse me. 1 Chronicles 12 and 32. And of the children of Issachar, you so-called Mexicans, pay attention, which were men that had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. The heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment. Yet Issachar had what you people call astrology, which that, man, I don't say this. All right, there's a right way to read the heavens and there's a wrong way. That astrology, Eve will be like, "What's your sign?" That's wicked, man. All right, but Issachar had the understanding of the signs in heaven to understand how to get here. Okay, so I'm gonna just close this out. Lord, when this left was edifying. This is how you so-called Seminole Indians, you so-called Native Americans, you so-called Puerto Ricans, you so-called Dominicans, you so-called Cubans, so on and so forth. The 10 tribes got over here to America. So with that, I'm going to say shalom.